set up a little work area over here to just kind of go over it. So first thing is the paddle. It's been well used. It's living up to its reputation. One of the things is when I bought it pretty cheap, they said this is indestructible, and I'm starting to believe it, because now almost 14 years later, probably close to 6,000 miles of paddling later, other than scars and marks and some scratches, it's in pretty good shape. So paddle is in good shape. So that goes right there. This is my sea kayaking paddle. It's a little bit longer. The blades are not as big. It's pretty good. I wouldn't take it whitewater kayaking. I don't know if it would fit, but it's also in pretty good shape. Just some minor scuffs, you know. I mean, if you use gear, you get some of that. So that's in good shape too. Now, throw ropes. Now this is a throw rope. This is something where if someone ever gets in trouble, you basically try to find a good place out in the river, you open it up, you catch this, and you literally throw it to them so that they can catch it. You can put them to safety in the shores. So it looks like it's in good shape. And let's see. Okay, this is a little bit loose, so let's pack it in a little bit more. At some point in the spring, I'll probably go ahead and do a YouTube on how to throw a throw rope, but I'm sure there's a million other videos on how to do that are just as good, because although I use gear, it doesn't mean that I'm an expert on it, and I would probably end up saying something that is not quite correct or whatnot. I am not, you know, certified or anything like that. So, boom, boom, there it is. It's in good shape. Shot it. And there you have it. All right. Throw rope shoot. Now this, of all the throw ropes, is my favorite. This one is something that you can just sort of carry with you in the boat. Basically around your wrist, it has a quick release. And what I like is that if you put it right, and I'm sorry I put it backwards, but you can always very quickly just sort of pull on that, and you have a throw rope, so you can start throwing it even before you are to shore if it's an emergency. Plus it really doesn't get in the way, and you don't have to pop your skirt, dig for it if you don't have a place to be on. And so this is also in good shape. Quick release works. So it's in good shape. Excellent. All right. Any other throw ropes and stuff like that? Doesn't seem to be the case. Let's just do that. It's always good, by the way, to have a heavy-duty Tupperware like this. If you're gonna carry your gear in the car, you know, when you come back from the river, you can put stuff in there, and if it drips water in it, it'll stay in there, and you won't get your car wet. So there you have it. All right, so that's that for throw ropes. So I'm gonna put them away, and then we'll go ahead and talk about setting up the kit to carry in the boat with you. Alright, so kits. Now these are little waterproof boxes, nothing much to them, they're not very big, but basically you can have a little bit of food, emergency light, perhaps an emergency knife and whatnot. It's very easy to basically sort of put something in here and forget about it, and all of a sudden 2 paddling seasons have gone by and oops, now all of a sudden your headlamp that you thought you could use, it doesn't work anymore or something. So this is a really good time to go ahead and have a look, test it, make sure if there's any food that is still good and whatnot. Okay, so I'm going to be changing the camera angle so you can see exactly what I'm speaking about. So real quick, you can see this kit has been around the block, I think close to 8 years at least. Alright, so you can see here. Okay, so just open it. And let's see. Stack shut. There it goes. Alright, so let's go ahead and take inventory. This is an emergency knife that actually still very sharp, has a little bit of rust here and there, but that's not going to take away from its usefulness. I used to have this attached to the PFD, but I really, anytime you have a piece of rope out in the river, I think you're just begging to get snagged with it. So what I did is I sort of retired this to put it in the kit. Then we have a very squished up sneakers, a little tool thing. This is one of those things you can buy for like, 40 cents in some of those little things. I don't know if you guys can see it, but look, it's better to have a little something like this than nothing at all. So I think it's worth the small amount of weight that it takes. Alright, we have some carboom. This is some really fast gel. As you can see, it's well weathered, but still good. A protein bar that's still intact. Another protein bar that is still intact. And another protein bar that is still intact. Excellent. So what I'm noticing I don't have in here is a source of light. So let's put it this way. You really don't want to get caught out in the middle of a dark body of water without sunlight. It's, of all places to run out of light, that's about the worst, because if you were to run out of light in the middle of a forest, you could kind of stop and you would be okay. If that happened to you in the trail with a mountain bike, you could stop and it might not be comfortable, but you can bivouac, you're fine. But out in the water, if you run out of light, not only might the tide take you someplace, but there's also the matter of other boats that cannot see you. So it's pretty darn important that you always have a source of light out in the river. So to that effect, one of the things I do is I purchased this, and it's a little emergency light. I just put fresh batteries on it, and I don't know if you can see it, but basically when you squish it a little bit more, it basically starts flashing, right? So if you ever need rescue and you need to basically be able to tell rescuers, hey, I'm here, come get me, this is just the thing to have. It's another way of basically mitigating risks. If you're gonna go paddle on your own, you never know when something could turn against you and you might need help. You want to do everything you can, of course, to never be in a position to need rescuing, But if you ever do, you really want to have the tools that will make that possible, because your life might depend on it. All right, so let's look at a good source of light. Now, doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a super bright bit of light. Okay, it could be something, something even relatively dim can be seen well in pitch black. So I have some old headlamps over here. Let's see what that one looks like in my work. And let's see. Alright, we can try this one. Let's see. This is an old Petzl Tika. I used to have a whole bunch of these, and they're good and durable, but they have been through the ringer, so I don't know if this one is going to work anymore. So I'm going to see if this works. It might just be that I need to get new headlamps. I mean, at some point things do wear out. All right, so this will work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change batteries on this one so that I know they're fresh, right? And basically I'll do that right now. Well, you guys don't need me to see change batteries, but so that would be basically one first aid, or one, how do you call it, emergency kit. Okay, so that's one, which I'll take care of in a minute. This is the other one, and let's see. Now this one is the one I normally take out in with me in the river. Like the other one is also shut. There it goes. All right, so this one starts with a small first aid kit. You never know when someone is going to decide to go through Charlie's washing machine upside down. Steve. Some bit of food, some and look, salted watermelon. How can you go wrong with that? And another little Petzl light. Let's see if it works. Hey, guess what? No light. So this one, its battery is changed as well. And once I do that, I'll put this guy back in the boat, so that is basically a grab and go, and I'll be set. So let me do that. I'll show it, put it away, and we'll move on with the rest of the game. Okay, so I have put it together. So the problem with this guy sometimes is they get a little bit tight to open, but we got light, we have the food. And one of the things is I'm going to put this a little bit beefier tool, right? I used to use this for computer support, but I really like it because it has all kinds of multi tools, you know, and you never know when you need something out there. I never have been in a bad situation, but I have been in a few close calls, just enough to know that it feels much better that you know when you have some tools to put your hands on if you are gonna need them. And trust me, when that moment comes, which sooner or later is bound to, I want to be on the, oh, it's okay, I have XYZ. All right, so put that in there. Tuck it in good. It's important to make sure that this has a good seal, which it does. And shut it up. Shut it. So now this is good for another year or so. You know, it can be there in the back of the boat, and if I ever run into any issues, at least I have something. I have light, I have a little mini tool, I have a little bit of food. And remember, sometimes this is not so much about you are gonna have. You never know when you could potentially run into someone else who has gotten into difficulties. They might not even be a paddler. It might be someone on the side of the shore that, hey, guess what? All of a sudden they're having a low blood sugar moment, and they need to put some energy in them, and they're nowhere near civilization. And what are you gonna do now? So, having a bite to eat, you might really be able to turn someone's really bad day into a slightly discomfortable one. Okay, so there you go. Get that. And I'm actually going to put in my list of gear to get. It's another small first aid kit like this, so that it can go on top of that, and that way there is a certain parity between those two. And I didn't check the seal. Yep, seal's in good shape, so go ahead and close it. Close it. So, first aid kits, or not first aid kits, but emergency things, emergency flasher, and lastly but not least, this is from the time I was paddling out in Lake Powell, and you know, this could really matter to you, which is normally I put my keys on my PFD and I carry it with them, but I always like to attach them to something where if they should accidentally come away and just fall on the water, rather than sink 20 feet into the murky waters, never to be seen again, and then, oh my God, how are you gonna get back into your car? This will either make them float, which this has pretty good flotation, so it would, but B, even if you had it attached to something that dragged it to the bottom, at least now you have something yellow that you can basically say that's where they are. You have a chance of perhaps being able to see them in the murky bottom. Okay? And that's basically it. So I'm gonna put all the gear away, and I'll say a farewell. All right. So let's talk PFDs and staying warm. Okay. So one of the things is that as we have, but over the years I have accumulated a few PFDs. Like with climbing equipment. They can sort of get old and not float as much, but they're still good alternatives if for some reason at some point you find that your primary piece of equipment is not available. So this is always a good chance to go ahead, check, make sure that there's nothing wrong with it. Try them on. One of the things is I have gained lots of weight because of my convalescence. So just make sure that nothing wrong with it. It will still fit you, so that it's still usable, which this one is. Sometimes this is not something I would go whitewater kayaking with, but if you're ever gonna go canoeing, it never hurts to have an extra PFD. If nothing else, you can always put it in the seat and it's good cushion. So this is sort of my overflow bin over here. I don't know if you guys can quite see it, but this is where gear that doesn't go out very often gets used. So this is another one. This is sort of comfortable. I would not quite use it for whitewater kayaking. Just make sure it still works. Okay, works. All right. So I'm looking for wear and tear, something that would indicate that something could potentially fall. This is actually important because if the person is ever wearing this and you have to pull them out of the water, you know, you actually don't try to pull them from their under armpits or anything. You literally grab it from the straps and you pull them out from the straps. So they have to be strong enough to really pull the whole person with them. This looks like it's in fine shape. There, good. Now this is my favorite PFD. It's a rescue vest actually, and it's well used, right? Just, you know, make sure everything still opens. It's in good shape. Nothing seems damaged. Because trust me, there are things that you just don't want to wait. Don't want to wait until you are only a few feet away from a big waterfall to realize they're not working. Because moving water is most definitely totally unforgiving, and it has more power than what you would think it could have. I always keep a watch attached to it, so you always have time out in the river, so you don't get surprised by sunset or anything like that. And because this is one of my primary PFDs, I have a perch just for it right there. So that sits there, so that it's always ready to go. Then one last PFD. Large, in good shape. So that also goes right in here. There it goes. All right. And then this is my other spare PFDs. I used to use this. This was actually my first PFD, which I bought with my whitewater kayak on Christmas of 2004, and still in good shape even after all this year. So. Fantastic. All right. So away, stuff it in. We close it in. One of the things is from time to time I get some field mice here. I just want to make sure they don't sneak in there and nibble away at any critical piece of equipment. We most definitely do not want that. So. Now this is going to be one of those, it doesn't quite fit the way it came. There it is. So I'll go ahead and I'll close that a little bit better. Now, staying warm. Neoprene gloves are your best friend when you're basically paddling out and it's 40 degrees or cooler, especially if you have wind. These things will keep your hands from freezing. Now, these guys are sort of preformed in a gripping position, so when you have them on, it sort of helps to kind of hold on a grip. So you don't have to keep working against the neoprene to hold it. And they are actually very nice and warm. Now, they won't keep you warm, but they'll keep you from freezing your hands off and losing feeling and not being able to grip, which can be pretty bad if you're dealing with rough water seas. Now, this is a hood. Basically, it protects. It's a neoprene hood. It protects all of your face. You would only have your eyes and how do you call it? Eyes, nose, and mouth exposed. And one of the problems I often have with this is that unless it's really cold, it's too warm. I literally feel like I'm about to melt when I had it. So if I ever was gonna go out in a very cold and windy condition where I really wanted to stay warm, I would use it. To my surprise, I have not used it as often as I thought I would. Probably to some extent it's because if the conditions are going to be that raw, I would not go paddle on my own, and there's not that many people who like to go out when it's that cold, so there you have it. Now I have a couple of neoprene gloves because you never know when you're going to need them, right? So I have these others, and then I have this. Now these are more primitive, okay? They don't have the grip shape, and I don't think they're quite as warm as the others. But again, you never know. If you have a friend who wants to come over and you want to have an extra pair, boy, it can make their experience a hell of a lot more palatable. So there you have it. Now I also have these ones. They're lighter, they are slightly formed, and what I really like about them is that you basically have a Velcro strap that you can basically wrap around your wrist so that it's harder for the water to get under them, or for moving water to literally take it off your hands. It can happen. Moving water will do things. Alright? So with good gloves, a hood, the only other thing that you are going to want to have is a paddle jacket or a dry top. So my dry top is right there. It's in good shape. I just used it, so I don't need to check it. But one of the things is when I go flat water paddle and it's this cold, normally what I'll do is I'll have a wetsuit, and then I'll have a paddle jacket to kind of act as a wind barrier and a splash barrier. Because sometimes, even if it's not raining, if there is wind and you chop against the water, the wind will pick it up and drive it into you, and then, you know, it'll get you wetter and cooler than you would be otherwise. So if you have something that will just shed the water, that's fine. And then the wetsuit is more for if something happens and you end up in the drink, instead of having only 3 minutes of survival time left, you have about 10 or so. And you can do something with 10 minutes. That's one of the reasons why you have to be so careful when you're moving in very cold waters. If you're going to go through a large body of water, you really have to be mindful of, okay, you know, while you're in the middle there, if something happens, you better be able to upright yourself, because otherwise you might not make it to shore before hypothermia claims you. Gotta keep that in mind, okay? Oh yes, one more thing. Often overlooked, neoprene booties. These guys are nice and flexible. Even if your feet get wet, which they tend to, it'll help to really keep your feet warmer than they would be otherwise. I mean, remember, you're not really flexing or using your legs that much when you're paddling. So normally what I'll do is I'll have heavy duty smart wool socks on, and then I'll put this on, and that's a pretty good combination. I seldom have felt my feet go super cold when I'm paddling out in winter. So something good to do. Alright, and as is often the case, these are the newer ones, and I have an old pair that I keep around either for friends or in case, you know, sometimes you forget your pair somewhere and you can't recover until much later or something. So as you can see, these guys are a little bit more worn out, but they work, so I keep them around. Now lastly, although I really don't use them that much these days, is seal socks. These guys have a vapor barrier inside, and they will keep your feet much warmer. But like I said, normally just smart wool socks with the booties have always worked pretty well for me, so I really haven't used them that much. Alright, so I'm now going to go ahead and put that stuff away, and then we're gonna go over helmets and skirts. Yes, I did say skirts. So, alright, so we're almost at the end of this now. So we're gonna go over helmets and skirts. So what are these skirts? Well, in kayaking what happens is you put this, you basically get in it, and this basically makes a seal between you and the boat around the cockpit, so that if you turn over or the water just splashes over, the water doesn't go into the boat. And this is actually something you really want, because if your boat gets full of water, it becomes a lot less stable. It sort of sloshes back and forth as the center of gravity and the center of buoyancy come closer together. That's why sometimes as a ship is sinking, even before it sinks, before the waves, it actually will overturn. So this might make you ask, what do you do if you get water in the boat? Well, if you're whitewater kayaking during the summer, you just take a break, go to some shore somewhere and just drain the boat, and that's it. But in winter, that is not something quite so palatable. You might be kind of not have a good shore. The shore might be encrusted with ice. So what do you do then? So what I normally do is I keep a big sponge around. And then what you do, if for some reason you get water in the boat, you just use this, you soap it up, you squeeze it, and just repeat, and you basically can bail moderate amounts of water pretty effectively. Okay, plus if you ever have to carry the boat on your shoulder, you can use it as a piece of padding so that it doesn't bite into your shoulder as much. So very cheap, very useful, highly recommended. I certainly recommend it. So put that in there. So this is the skirt for the sea kayak, skirts for the whitewater kayak. On the sea kayak, you're hopefully not going to be upside down or rolling in humongous waves. So it's not quite as flexible. It's sort of a more sort of rigidy, not quite so hard to take off and put back on. Okay. Now, helmets. Well, many eons ago, this was actually my first river helmet, which was basically a repurposed bike helmet. This helmet, as you can probably see, has pretty much reached the end of its life. It wouldn't be safe to really bike with it, so I am going to retire it. It's a shame, but you just don't mess around with safety. So that will go in the trash here in a few minutes. So I'll just put that. Now this was my first helmet, starting to show its age. It has a little bit of rust in some of the how do you call it, remaches, in some of the must be getting late at night because I can't remember the translation for it. The rivet, that's it. And one of the problems is that it doesn't quite fit me right. So if you're paddling for 4 or 5 hours, it can kind of hurt. You know, I have kind of a bit of a you say it, squarish head with a corner on either side, and so it just puts pressure in it. Nevertheless, whenever I go paddle, even if it's flat water, I always like to have a helmet on, because you never know when you could kind of take a flip and hit something, and so this is a way of mitigating that risk. Now, recently, on my last outing, as a matter of fact, I stopped by Potomac Paddle Sports, which is, by the way, the place I learned to kayak. And I owed myself this. I mean, this is still the original package. I have not had a chance to take this helmet out, but in trying it, one thing I can tell you for sure is it fits well and is super comfortable. It's just, you know, it just sits there and it just, I mean, no pressure points. Fantastic. So I am looking forward to taking this out for a spin. I'm hoping to do that before the end of the year, and if I do, of course there will be a YouTube video, and I'll put it out there if anyone wants to go for a cold water paddle around the metropolitan Washington area, West Virginia area, Potomac. Let me know. Perhaps we can go together. But anyway, so that's what we have with that. And that's just basically about it. So I'm gonna put this gear away, and hopefully there will be lots of videos to come of beautiful rivers to paddle. Okay, so here we have it. All the gear has been put away. As you can see, the boat is all set to go. I have put the emergency kit in it, and then you can see all that gear is nice and put together. Helmets, PFDs, skirts, and even the booties down there, all along, you know, with the climbing gear in there. So this is step by step how you make sure that, hey, when you want to go paddle, when you want to go climbing, when you want to go mountain biking, you gotta have sort of the gear ready to go, so you don't have to spend, like, you know, a whole day just getting ready to be there, and then, oh my god, did I forget anything? So just be ready, go. So this is sort of like my little operations base. All right, and if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to ask. I am feeling better and better every day. I actually was diving for about 3 hours today. The neck is feeling really good. I think it's too early to say. I think that my left leg is feeling a little bit better. There is still some funkiness, but I think I have to go dig for them a little bit more. The biggest change lately, I think, has been that my right knee, the one with patellar tendonitis, is very gradually getting better. So I am feeling a little bit more at liberty to jump on the board. And even today, after 3 hours of diving and another 40 minutes, not quite 40 minutes swimming, I mean, I can feel that there's still a little bit of some tightness in there, but it's feeling better. So I'm kind of hoping that in about 3 weeks, I'll be able to sort of jump more forcefully in it, so that I can start doing front approaches on the diving board, and then I can do things like paddling to rest the leg. It'll be a very good combination. So step by step, today really being what, 14 weeks and 4 days since I had surgery. I'm really starting to feel like I am getting close to being able to really start going at it. And I cannot tell you how relieved I am that that's happening. There was real doubt in my head as to, oh my God, all the stuff that I like to do, am I ever going to be able to do it again? And starting to look like the answer to that is yes. I'm just kind of hoping that my spinal cord keeps finding a way to operate despite the damage it suffered, and I can go explore again. Alright guys, ask any questions if you want, make a comment. I would like to know if this is kind of helping anyone else with ACDF, or even if you haven't had you know, neck surgery and whatnot. If you're an aging athlete and you have any questions, or you want to give me some suggestions, because I'm by far the source of all knowledge or wisdom, I would like to know what you have to say about that. So, good night.